There is a water tower in the Brazilian jungle, 45 meters tall with the Ford oval painted near the top. No one who works for Ford put it there. The paint is faded now. The company that raised it walked away 80 years ago, and the 2,000 people living in its shadow today are squatters, on land nobody has decided who owns. This is Fordlandia. Henry Ford built an American town in the Amazon, and almost everyone tells the story wrong. In 1927, Ford had a problem. About 3/4 of the world's rubber came from British-controlled plantations in Malaya. Every tire on every car he built depended on a supply his rivals could choke. So Ford went to the source. Brazil granted him a concession on the Tapajós River, roughly 2.5 million acres. No export tax. Brazil took 9% of the profits. Ford spent over $20 million. Roads, a powerhouse, a hospital, a movie theater, rows of metal-roofed American houses. He called it Fordlandia. Not one drop of latex from it ever reached a Ford car. The usual version of what went wrong is simple. Visionary meets jungle, jungle wins. That version is comfortable. It is also incomplete, because the failure was written down first and filed years before a single tree went in. The killer was a fungus, South American leaf blight, Microcyclus ule. It evolved in the Amazon, right alongside the rubber tree. In the wild, rubber trees grow scattered, far apart, and the fungus can't jump between them. Plant them in tight plantation rows, and those rows become a highway. One season and the leaves are gone. None of this was secret. In 1909, the blight was already destroying plantations in Guyana. In 1923, a British Guiana botanist named R.A. Altson published the numbers, a 93% drop in yield. In the same report, he recorded Goodyear abandoning a rubber plantation in Panama. This was in the scientific literature 5 years before Fordlandia. Then it gets closer to Ford. In 1926, a USDA plant pathologist named James Weir published a survey of rubber diseases. His recommendation was specific. Do not grow plantation rubber inside the range of this fungus. And in April 1927, before the town existed, a University of Michigan botanist named Carl LaRue wrote a feasibility report on the exact stretch of the Tapajós that Ford had chosen. LaRue had studied Amazon rubber disease on a government expedition back in 1923. His report sits in Ford's own archive to this day. So the knowledge existed. The question is who was holding it in August 1928 when the ship sailed. 2 vessels left for the Amazon, the steamer Lake Ormoc and the barge Lake Farge. Here is what they carried: prefabricated buildings, a sawmill, ice-making machines, hospital equipment, a powerhouse, railroad track. Here is what they did not carry: not one botanist, not one agronomist, not a plant pathologist, not an entomologist, nobody who knew what leaf blight was. The man put in charge was a Danish sea captain named Einar Oxholm. No agricultural training of any kind. LaRue and Weir, the 2 men who understood the enemy, stayed home, and so 200,000 trees went into the ground in dense, orderly rows copied straight from the British plantations in Asia. That model worked in Asia for exactly one reason. In Asia, the rubber tree is a foreign import, and the fungus isn't there. In the Amazon, they planted the tree in the fungus's own backyard and built it a highway. For a while, it almost looked fine. The resentment came first before the blight. In December 1930, the workers revolted. They called it the breaking pans. Ford had banned alcohol, dictated their meals from Michigan, brown rice, canned peaches, oatmeal, and sent a sociology department to inspect how they lived. They smashed the cafeteria and the time clocks. The Brazilian army had to be called in. The trees held on a little longer. By 1933, the leaf blight arrived, exactly as the literature had promised, and moved down the rows like fire. Most of the plantation was gone. The thing every published paper had warned about had finally happened, right on schedule. Now here is the part that decides what this story means. In 1933, Ford finally called James Weir, the man whose warning had been in print for 7 years. Weir told them 2 things: use resistant, cloned stock and move to better ground downriver. Ford listened at last and built a second plantation, Belterra, and it worked. In 1942, Belterra shipped 750 tons of rubber. Late, partial, but real. That single fact breaks the hubris story. The Amazon was not unbeatable. The expertise was not useless. When Ford finally put it in the room, it produced rubber. Which means the failure at Fordlandia was never about the jungle. It was about a decision. The decision to sail without the people who knew. So here is where I'll plant my flag. Fordlandia is not a story about nature humbling a rich man's ego. It is a story about a machine for not listening. Ford didn't burn the warnings. He didn't need to. He built a company where the report and the ship were two parallel lines that never touched. The knowledge got generated, written down and filed, and then not carried into the room where the decision was made. I'll name the weak point in that reading. We know LaRue's 1927 report exists in the archive. What we can't confirm from the public record is whether that specific report spelled out the Blight in plain words. That still sits behind the archive door, but the rest doesn't need it. Altson, Weir, and a government expedition had already made the danger a matter of record, and the ship sailed without a single expert anyway. Ford himself never once set foot in Fordlandia. He designed the whole thing from Michigan, and never came. In 1945, his grandson sold both plantations back to Brazil for about $244,000, against an investment north of $20 million. And the town just stayed. The jungle took some of it. People kept living in the rest. Then 90 years later, the pattern repeated. Brazil's heritage agency, IFAN, opened a process to protect Fordlandia back in the 1990s. It sat. In 2024, the council formally denied the listing. And on the 29th of May, 2026, 3 weeks before I wrote this, a federal judge in Pará finally ordered the government to save the place. 90 days to inspect every building, 180 to plan the restoration, daily fines if they stall, a documented case ignored for decades until a court forced the obvious. The same failure mode Ford invented, running a second time. Which brings us back to the water tower, 45 meters of concrete with a faded oval on it, standing over a town Ford never visited, kept standing by people Ford never paid. It isn't there because the jungle won. It's there because a memo never made it upstairs. If you want another place the map remembers and the world forgot, the next one in the Vanish series is already waiting. The archive stays open. If this one pulled you in, start here next.